Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Before we begin with the meeting, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go ahead and open up the regular city council meeting and call it to order. Again, the time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the back wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call, city council. Yeah.
Is he in the group? He's excluded from voting.
Okay, so that was probably from last time. There we go. All right, let's try that again.
All right, please revote. We know you're here, Jeff, but we got you officially now. So.
All right, 8 members are present. All right.
All right, very good. Well, tonight we'll get into my mayor's comments, and we have a few different presentations tonight, which I'm really excited about. First, we just would like to recognize the service awards that were for March. First, we have Brian Monahan, 15 years of service. Brian was hired as a full-time firefighter paramedic with the city of Fremont in 2010. He was then promoted to lieutenant in 2019. As of June 2022, Brian has held the position of fire captain. So we appreciate Captain Monahan for 15 years of service. We also have Sean Jacobs, 10 years of service. Sean has been with the Department of Utilities since 2015 as a customer service assistant. So appreciate both those individuals with their service to the city. Next, we are going to celebrate 2 different proclamations in regards to their national weeks. They're happening on the same week of the year. The first is this week is National Library Week. And so we have our library director, Laura England Biggs, here. I would just like to say we are very blessed in this community to have a wonderful new library that provides tremendous service to the community, programming. Every time I drive by there at night, there is an event going on. It's amazing how many meetings and events you have. And also a great resource for our kids and parents and families. And, I also want to really appreciate the library staff and what they give to the community and the work they put in. They had me, putting books back, checking books out, making calls, last year as I was part of the mayor at work. So I got to see a little bit of a glimpse of what it was like. And it's not as simple as you may think. There's a lot behind the scenes that goes involved. And so, there really isn't a place in our community that we have like a library that we can be able to have access to resources to be able to grow and learn. And so I just want to thank Laura for her work and come up here to accept this proclamation. Now, therefore, I, Joey Spellerberg, Mayor of the City of Fremont, Nebraska, do hereby proclaim the week of April 6th through April 12th, 2025 as National Library Week. And during this week, I encourage all Fremont residents to visit the Key Memorial Library, explore its resources, and celebrate all the ways that our library draws us together as a community. So let's give Laura a round of applause. All right, Laura, thank you. Okay, the next week this is a big week this week. We have Public Transit Week. And so we're here with Dakota Busing, our Fremont Transit Manager. Dakota's been doing a great job managing our transit program. Just a little bit of a background. The Eastern Nebraska Office of Aging stopped providing transportation services in the community. And we were left with a big hole on what we were going to do to help folks get to doctor's appointments, get to the grocery store, get to business appointments within the community. And so here at the city, we stepped up and we took over the vans from the Eastern Nebraska Office of Aging, hired the drivers, got the program set up with the federal government. We are blessed. This is 80 to 90% federally funded, and started to get this program set up. And again, over the last couple of years, I'm amazed. We've had 20 to 25 rides a day, and we've just eclipsed our 10,000th ride, which is pretty incredible. And so I'm just really thankful that we have a service like this that's really door to door, and that's what we pride ourselves on, is delivering a high quality service in the community with our transit program. And we wouldn't be able to do it without Dakota, our drivers, and the city council and those that helped approve and get our city and get this transit program going. And so this is important for us to recognize Transit Week and the impact that this program has had in Fremont. So I would like to just read this proclamation. Now, therefore, I, Joey Spellerberg, Mayor of the City of Fremont, Nebraska, do hereby proclaim the week of April 6th through 12th, 2025 as Public Transit Week. Dakota, would you come up and accept that? Let's give him a round of applause. Right. Now it's kind of like the finale, we are, it's been kind of a tradition that if we have a state championship team within this high school in the city of Fremont, that we honor them. And tonight, we are blessed to have the NSAA Class C2 State Championship Bergen basketball boys team here with us today. I just want to give a little bit of a background on the season that they had. It was quite impressive. They recently won the Class C2 State Championship, defeating Cross Country 53 to 43. Entering the tournament, the state tournament, as an 8 seed, they came in with 9 losses. They had no seniors. Bergen pulled off the Cinderella run, taking down the number 1, number 3, and number 4 seeds along the way to claim their 5th state title and 1st since 2014. Key highlights: Gavin Baker, 6'6" junior, anchored the defense with 14 points, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 2 steals. Trey Mooney, the sophomore, scored 16 points, 14 of which came in the second half, leading the charge during a critical 8-0 fourth quarter run. Kale Sheets contributed 9 points and a team high 8 rebounds. And Bergen, they overcame so much in that game with size disadvantages. They were switching defenses, using their athleticism to create turnovers, finishing with 12 steals and 16 points off turnovers. So quite a state championship game, quite a team effort by the whole Bergen boy team. Head coach Ryan Menarek, who's here, it was able to write a little bit about this team that I want to share with you, kind of about their year. Okay. And he said, this team started out their season with no seniors on the roster, entered their first game starting 4 sophomores and 1 junior, with really only 3 of those starters having a substantial amount of playing time from the previous year. They knew there was potential, but also knew that this was going to be a process due to their youth and lack of experience. Over the course of the regular season, this team lost 8 games, but really learned something from each one of those losses. Those lessons learned proved to be extremely valuable in the growth of this team towards the end of their season. As they moved through their toughest part of their schedule, their confidence grew on both ends of the floor as they learned that they could compete with the top teams in the state. They were fortunate to have some things go their way the last few weeks of the season, and it was an historic journey that is sometimes still hard to believe. But we are so proud of this group of players that were a team of faith and never quit believing. And so I just want to say, on the behalf of the city of Fremont, how proud we are of you and your accomplishment. I think the last part of Coach's sentence means the most. You were a team of faith. You never gave up. You persevered. You never quit, even when you had those losses early on in the season. And you came back as an 8 seed. And I looked up the statistics. You were the first 8 seed to win a Nebraska Boys State title since 2009, which is quite incredible. And this is the 5th state title in Bergen history and first since 2014. So thank you for representing our community so well, for your accomplishment. We're so proud of you. And so I would like to, before I read the proclamation, like to call up and recognize each one of you that are here today. And first of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Parents, thank you for your support. As I know, it takes a lot more, it takes a lot on your end over the years as you've watched them grow in athletics. And so if you are here, would you please come forward and we'll recognize you. First, we have Jackson Luby. Next, Alec Fellers, Nolan Paulson, Trent Menarick, Trey Mooney, Boston Bojanski, Zach Schultz, Gavin Dean, Kale Sheets, Alex Kimina, Eli Croner, Zane Wolf, Owen Nelson, Alex Cruz, Gavin Baker, and CJ Redmond. We also have coaches Ryan Menard and Chris Rainforth. So you guys come up. I want to come around here. Hey, we got the trophy. You don't leave with that. So I would like to read this proclamation on behalf of the city of Fremont, that now, therefore, I, Joey Spilliver, Mayor of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, hereby recognize and congratulate the Fremont Archbishop Bergen boys basketball team for their tremendous achievement in winning the 2025 Class C2 state championship. Let's give them a round of applause. You guys are welcome to leave if you'd like. You can stick around. We got other fun stuff going on tonight, but Okay. Okay, now I get that. All right. All right, well, that concludes my comments for this evening. Thanks for bearing with me through those. We will go through, start with item 1 is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the April 8th, 2025 regular meeting. Councilman Vaughn.
So moved.
Councilman Jensen.
I will second.
This is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay,
Would like to move item number 22 as far forward as we can practically, since they're in public hearing on number 4. It just would make sense to talk about that earlier on than keep it all the way to the last.
okay, so you want to, we could propose moving item 22,
Wherever makes
just
the best
before the
sense.
consent agenda.
Yeah, that would be good.
Are you okay with withdrawing your motion to approve the agenda?
Yes.
before? Okay, all right. So that would be a motion to amend the agenda to move item 22 after item 4. Councilman Vaughn,
Yes, so moved.
Councilman Horner,
Second.
okay. Cast your vote to amend the agenda.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Are there any other changes to the agenda? Opposed? I would take a motion to approve the agenda then as amended. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make that motion.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to appointments, item 2 is a motion to confirm the appointment of Gavin Peterson as a police officer for mayor recommendation. It is my honor tonight to present Gavin Peterson as a police officer here at the city of Fremont. Gavin has completed all required qualifications and also gone through the civil service process. And so I'm excited to be able to present Gavin as a new officer tonight. Are there any questions for myself regarding the appointment? If there are none, I would take a motion to approve Gavin Peterson as a police officer. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make that motion for Gavin Peterson.
Councilman Horner.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Gavin, congratulations. Welcome to the police department. All right, we'll move on to item 3 is a motion to confirm the appointment of Nicholas Heidlich as police detective per mayor recommendation. It is again my honor tonight to present Nicholas Heidlich as our new police detective here at the city of Fremont. I do have our deputy chief, Jennifer Burkhofer, here, who would like to come up and say a few words about the promotion of Nicholas Heidlich. Jennifer, his staff right there. Yep.
Officers going through the promotional process spend a significant amount of time reading, studying, and preparing for testing and interviews in order to be selected for promotion. Officer Heidlich's name has been brought before you for promotion to the rank of detective, and we want to take the opportunity to recognize Officer Heidlich and tell you a little bit about him. Officer Nick Heidlich joined the Fremont Police Department on March 13th, 2017. As an officer in the patrol division, he worked both the day shifts and the night shifts for 6 years. In April of 2023, Officer Heidlich was selected to become an investigator with the 3 Corps Drug Task Force, where he is currently assigned. Officer Heidlich earned his Bachelor of Arts degree, dual majoring in criminal justice and sociology from Midland University, graduating in 2016. After graduating, Officer Heidlich worked as a correctional officer at the Nebraska State Penitentiary and the Saunders County Jail. Officer Heidlich believes in giving back to the community and volunteers on a regular basis. Some of his volunteer activities include drug and narcotic awareness presentations to Midland University and the United Way. Officer Heidlich also participates in Shop with a Cop every December. This event is geared towards underprivileged youth. While serving at the Fremont Police Department, Officer Heidlich has been awarded a Distinguished Service Award, Commendation of Merit Award, Life Saving Award, and 2 Specialized Unit Awards. Officer Heidlich believes his greatest career accomplishment to date was being selected as an investigator with the 3 Corps Drug Task Force. While assigned to the Patrol Division, Officer Heidlich recognized the prevalence of drugs and the dangers they bring to our community. He feels honored to be placed in a position to combat drugs. Officer Heidlich has conducted several drug investigations while being assigned to the task force. These have resulted in many arrests for drug distribution. Officer Heidlich says being assigned to investigate reassured him that he possessed the skill set and ability to serve as a detective.
Thank you, Chief Burkhofer, for that. Are there any comments or questions from the council? If there are none, I would take a motion in regards to the promotion of Nicholas Heidlich. Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to approve the confirmation.
Councilman Jensen,
I say congratulations and second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, and now we do have a special presentation. So Chief Burkhofer, go ahead with your presentation.
Joining Officer Heidlich today for a pinning ceremony are his wife Jenny and his son Peter. Currently viewing online are his father Joel and his mother Patricia, who are currently viewing from Dayton, Ohio. Pinning Detective Heidlich's badge on today will be his wife Jenny. Hey, bud. See your face.
Congratulations. Thank you, Deputy Chief Burkhofer, for that presentation. This is something that we're going to want to do when it comes to promotions within our police department. And I want to thank Chief Burkhofer for bringing that forward to me as again, opportunity for us to, again, learn more about our officers, great job they do, and also give a chance to recognize them, bring their families. And so thank you for that so very much. Okay, now we'll move on to item 4, which is our public hearings and ordinance number 5712 for a change of zone to R rural and GC general commercial to mobile home plan development for the Meadowbrook mobile home community. This would be for first reading. We'll have staff report from Jennifer Dam.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request for a change of zone from rural and GC general commercial to PD planned development for the Meadowbrook mobile home development. Excuse me. The Meadowbrook community was developed in the 1970s. At that time, it was in the county jurisdiction. It came into the city's jurisdiction in the 1990s when we annexed the airport. It has been a non-conforming use since that time. All of our mobile home parks became, except for one, became non-conforming when the zoning ordinance was updated in 2017. What this planned development will allow is for the area to become a conforming use, which allows the property owner to make investments in the area and encourages it more. As a non-conforming use, that tends to discourage investment in the properties. The property owner is extending a forced sanitary sewer main. You approved that attachment agreement a couple meetings ago. They're taking apart the existing sanitary sewer package plant, which isn't working quite so well, and connecting to the city's sanitary sewer system. They're extending a water line to add a fire hydrant to the area. They've paved streets in the area. They've paved driveways. They're adding mailboxes. They will be adding a play area, a storm shelter, which we will help them write a grant for, and landscaping in the area as well. Right now, there are 143 leasable sites. This will allow them to ultimately extend up to 177 sites. There are currently 10 sites that are non-conforming, so they have been unable to fill. They'll be able to fill these once this has been approved. And then once the fire hydrant are in place and they have a building permit for the storm shelter, they'll be able to start filling other sites as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer. Just one quick question. I know I read in here, that there's a condition on the, storm shelter, getting permitted. Can you give us any feedback or any estimation on, once it's permitted, how long it's gonna take to construct that and roughly what's the size of it?
I think the applicant might better be able to answer that question when he gives his presentation. We're fairly confident that they will be able to get a grant from the Nebraska Emergency Management Association to build that shelter. And then I'll let him answer the questions on the size.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, Jennifer, I think you answered most of my questions when we talked yesterday. Could you just do a quick thumbnail sketch on difference between conforming and non-conforming? How this suddenly becomes a conforming use?
Yes.
Just overview.
Sure. With the plan development, it will be a conforming use, which means that it's permitted and allowed. As a non-conforming use, currently, if a mobile home site is vacant for a period of 6 months or more, it can't be rebuilt upon. If a tornado went through tomorrow and it was all wiped out, they wouldn't be able to rebuild as a non-conforming use. So this allows them to continue to invest in the community.
So,
And it provides much needed affordable housing.
so there is not, are there a set of characteristics that makes it conforming or non-conforming, or is it just? That's why I'm a little bit unclear.
Sure. As it's in the UDC, mobile home parks are listed as major non-conforming uses. They're specifically called out. But by using a planned development and with the mobile home basis, because there is it's conflicting in the current UDC, there is a mobile home zoning district. The planned development then it is a zoning change in and of itself, which allows this to be conforming and allows it to continue under the stipulations of the planned development, which are set out in the appendices in the staff report and then in the development agreement.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor, the applicant has requested that the council receive some presentation materials.
Okay. Do you want to do that at this point?
Yeah, if we could.
Okay, I'd take a motion to receive the applicant's presentation materials. Councilman Peterson.
Yes, so moved.
Okay, Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
Please vote to receive the materials.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, are there any other questions for staff at this point? Councilman Peterson.
And maybe this is in the handouts, but what is thank you for coming tonight, and I'm for anybody that wants to clean things up and make it better, an improvement, that's wonderful. What, maybe it says in here, how many people live there now versus what's the plan to expand?
I don't know the number of people that live there, but currently there are 143 home sites,
Really?
and this would increase it to 177 home sites.
Okay. Oh, 35. Okay, it's on here. Thank you. Thanks for handing that out. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions this moment? At this time, we'd want to have the applicant come forward and give it the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Very pleased to be here. My name is Paul Luber, and I'm a partner in the ownership group for Meadowbrook Mobile Home Park. And, we're here tonight to elaborate a little bit on what Jennifer has said. In terms of the overview, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Seneca and, how we provide affordable workforce housing, unsubsidized workforce housing. And then I'll tell you about the investments that we're intending to make at Meadowbrook, subject to your approval. Could you go to the next slide, Michael? So this is a map of our properties. We have about a little over 20 properties in 10 different states. We provide workforce housing for 2,500 families. And, we take that responsibility seriously. We believe in home ownership for the tenants in our parks. And what that means is they own the homes. They're not renters. They own the homes. And that provides a sense of ownership, and it builds community, and it allows them to build equity in their homes as well. And so that's a key part of our business plan for Meadowbrook. We have a few rentals out there, but by and large, it's owned workforce housing. Next slide, please. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the infrastructure that we're going to invest in out there, the amenities, and then the increase in the affordable housing stock. And it's a little bit of a review of what Jennifer just recited, but let's go forward. I want to call your attention. There's a list that was distributed, 11 items here, and that sort of highlights the items. So this is the first one. This is a map of that force main sewer that Jennifer spoke about. It goes from our property 2 miles to the west to about the Butler Agricultural Building, the equipment building, which is just north of the airport. And next slide, please, Michael. This is just a demonstration of the tornado shelter. To answer your question, it's about 2,400 square feet is what we're planning for. It'll fit on one lot, lot 97, which is centrally located in the development. Next slide, please. We're going to put in a fire hydrant with a fairly large pipe going to it, so we'll have good flow, good fire protection in the center of the community. Next slide. This is from a property up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but this shows sort of a before and after of what happens when you pave these driveways. So, Meadowbrook had very raggedy, weed-infested driveways that were gravel surfaces. And the next slide, please. And this is, closer to what they look like now. So we feel very good about having done that. We also paved about 2,200 feet of gravel roads in the park as well. Next slide, please. One of the centerpieces of what we do in these communities is we create these playgrounds with a picnic pavilion, and that fence is there very purposefully because it segregates kids from the traffic. And we'll have things very similar to this, different configuration, but we're going to do that down in the front. If you go to the next thing, this is the front area. And when you drive by Meadowbrook right now, where those 7 houses are and the play area is, it's like this big nasty piece of concrete. And we're going to take all that out. We're going to put a privacy fence, which is what you see along the lower edge of that slide, with nice landscaping at the base, and kind of undulates in and out. So it has some visual interest to it. It's not just this straight long fence. We have the play area there. We also renovated the office, which is shown on the right-hand side of that slide. And there's a new mail center there as well. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the site plan. And this, I'll call your attention to item 10, because that really kind of nails down where we're planning to expand and those kinds of things as well. So the gold colored are the existing homes in the drawing. And then the yellow ones, which are a little hard to see in this slide, but the yellow ones are the vacant site. They are the 10 sites that Jennifer spoke about that formerly were non-conforming. What's that?
Go ahead. I think we had an audio video.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the 10 sites are the lots which are at the moment non-conforming. Hopefully, once this passes, if it passes, they will be conforming lots. And then the green lots are new lots that will be installing infrastructure. And then there are these blue lots, and the blue lots really are kind of a future thing, honestly. They are where you have 2 houses on 3 lots currently, and if those 2 houses were to go away, we could replace them with 3 houses. And so they're kind of off into the future. Really, practically speaking, it's 30 additional lots, 10 existing lots, 20 new lots. So that's the summary. And that really is kind of the summation of, you know, what we're doing at Meadowbrook. And, you know, I'd appreciate your support on this. We've worked very hard. Jennifer and I have worked on this for 18, 24 months. I mean, like the first file I have has a 22 on the end of it, honest to God, and it's 25. So I'm grateful for that, Jennifer. Thank you. And Travis and my attorney, Dave Mitchell, have been very helpful to us as well in terms of crafting that development agreement. So with that, I'll stop and, you know, happy to answer any questions you have, and we'll go from there.
I would like to take this opportunity to, the council can have questions for the applicant if you'd like. So Councilman Peterson, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious, you said the residents will own the homes. Will they also own the land? Is it?
No, we can't do that because of the provisions in our loan, because
Okay.
our loan has the land as collateral, so we couldn't subdivide it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they will own so these are mobile homes, and I'm just, and forgive me because I'm ignorant about this a
No,
little
no,
bit. So
fine.
I just, so are those, so once those are there, are they there like, I mean, if somebody would say, well, I'm moving to Idaho, I'm taking my house with me. I mean, they
Yeah.
can do that? Is that something they can, I mean, dumb question, but I just have to
No,
ask.
it's not a dumb question, because this is not common knowledge. You know, I mean, I work in kind of a specialized real estate niche. You know, the name mobile really refers to its trip from the factory to the site. And then its wheels and axles are taken off. It's put on concrete blocks with a foundation,
And an
and it's
apron and so
strapped
forth.
down because
Right.
of, you know, tornadoes and those kind of things, so that it can't be upset by wind. And you can move them. You can put the
Okay.
wheels back on, and we do have people that do that, but it's very rare. What is much more common, and, you know, I refer to building equity, you know, amongst the homeowners. You know, some of these people have loans. There are chattel loans that they get for these homes.
Okay.
But, you know, as they pay that down, their equity grows, and they can sell it. Just like you sell a stick-built home in a single-family neighborhood, there's an active buying and selling that goes on with these things.
Okay.
Yeah. Does
Well,
that answer your question?
Well, yeah, it does. It does. And I appreciate you doing this because it's another affordable home and I like the word unsubsidized. That really gets my attention.
It is,
Yeah,
free
Thank you.
market.
Thank you for taking this on. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Appreciate it.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
I actually had a question from someone who lives out there, or more of a concern about the playground next to Platte River Road. They were
Yes.
concerned that it was so close, but I see you are putting a fence up.
Yes.
Is that like a privacy fence, a taller fence, or is it similar to the white one that you had shown
Well,
in your
I'm gonna,
presentation?
I'm gonna go to this diagram because I just have the point, you know. So within the interior, this
It does. I just wanted to make you aware of a concern of someone who lives out there about the playground being closer to the road and the picnic shelter being set back.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. So you're suggesting perhaps that we put the playground a little closer to the interior street in the pavilion on the south
Maybe
side?
flip them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't design these, so
Right.
it's just something someone had mentioned to me. So,
Sure.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Horner.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Paul, for coming and being willing to talk to us. And also,
Yeah.
I'm gonna mirror what Jeff said. I appreciate seeing someone coming in, putting in the investment, and, you know, hopefully that's gonna transform that area out there. And
I
I'd
think
like
it
to
will
see a
be.
before and after picture on that one day. I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
You did answer this question about the size. Can you give me, some idea about how long from the time you get the permit till you think that storm shelter is gonna be, completed? And then how many people will 2,400 square feet hold roughly?
The shelter, the shelter's designed on the basis of about 2.5 people per home. And it's designed on the park being 95% full, which is a typical, you know, if you get to 95%, you're doing very well. And so the particular number, I happen to know it because I've been looking at it lately, is 423 people. So it's not a small structure. I mean, I was just out there today, we were laying it out, and I think it's gonna be, I wanna say like maybe 58 feet in one direction and maybe 44 feet in another direction. And that's interior space is about 2,400 feet. Well, yeah, I'm thinking it's 90 to 150 days is kind of, what I'm thinking. Like if have all our ducks in a row and we can get some decent weather, as Jennifer talked about, there's a issue if the NEMA grant, for whatever reason, isn't awarded. We're going to apply in May, like by the 16th of May, we got to apply. And then it takes them until December to say, yes, you're good to go. And so, because there are certain linkages in the development agreement between us progressing on improvements on the new lots, that is the green squares, we want to get the permit for that as soon as possible. And we want to start construction on it as soon as possible. I think I will be constrained because there's a provision in the NEMA grant that says you can't bill us retroactively. You have to have the grant approved and then you start construction. So probably the earliest I can start on it is December of 25. And then, I'm praying for a warm winter, I'm praying for a warm winter. I met today with the general contractor out there. He is optimistic that we can get some concrete work done in the winter months. And, I think I'll probably move forward pretty quickly on the CDs as well, because there's certain constraints on moving forward with things that are a function of getting the permit. So I want to get that permit ASAP. So we're pretty programmed to get it done.
Well, thanks for the explanation and thanks for the answers on the question. I think I grew up in Florida. Jimmy Buffett didn't have a lot of good things to say in some songs about trailers and saying they looked a lot better as beer cans. And that was because we've seen them, what happens to them, and a tornado can do a lot of damage. And so that structure is very important. So it sounds like you've thought it through. And so that's kind of what I wanted to hear. So thank you.
All right, any member of the council that hasn't spoken at this point that would like to have a question for the applicant? Okay, Councilman Peterson, I'll go ahead just real quick.
Just real quick. Last question. And this is a new concept, kind of, sort of. Back at Woodcliff used to be this way a million years ago, but in terms of lots and home being separate. So with your ownership in the land, is there some kind of an HOA set up where you police it? I mean, in other words, I appreciate you're trying to take something that looks terrible and make it look beautiful again, which is fantastic. So if someone decides, well, hey, let's park 3 cars in the front yard, that should be like a non-starter. Is that, can you police that, or you just say, well, we can't do anything about it? I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm going to vote no because of that. I'm just a fair question.
Yeah, well, I'm going to talk about that. Yeah. You are asking some very insightful questions, actually. And, we have a management company, M. Shapiro Real Estate. They manage all 21 of our parks. They're based in the Detroit metro area, but they travel. We have local people who work in the parks every day. And we enforce the rules as best we can. And I don't mean that to be like a half-hearted sort of a situation. It's just like, it's a little bit like high school. You gotta police the rules.
Right.
And, Jennifer was out there and, she said, there's some things here that don't look so great. And we took that to heart, honestly. I'm not kidding around here.
She's
I mean,
right.
When she makes comments, I listen. And so we've been working very hard on that. Sometimes we have towed several cars out of there in the last couple of weeks because people are stubborn. Right. And unfortunately, people, you have to say like, okay, you got warning number 1, you got warning number 2. This is your 3rd warning. After this, we're going to tow the car. And you don't tell them, you just tow it. Right. And then they have to go deal with the impound lot to get it. What happens? I'm glad you asked the question because, when you do these types of improvements in these parks, what happens is I didn't mention it, but we have this paint program that we're gonna do. We're gonna pick out like the 10 or 15 nastiest looking homes out there. We're gonna paint them with a really attractive two-tone paint. And although paint is not a complete renovation of the home, it does make a difference. And what
sure.
happens is the people next door look at it. I think I'll paint my house. And then we do the playground in the front, you know, and, you know, people are like, wow, this place is, it's turning the corner. And it starts to snowball. And, you know, it really makes a big difference. I've done this in several parks and it's remarkable. And it's
Good.
kind of heartening, you know, because
Good.
you're like, oh, God, people are recognizing and doing some things to improve their own homes. This is integral with them owning their own homes, not renting them. You know, they have pride of ownership. There's a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses that goes on. And it's a great snowball to have as a park owner. That's what we want.
Well, you want it to look nice. You want it to be a showplace.
You want it to look
Right.
nice and you want it to be a showplace. And, you know, one thing I will say, Jennifer, is I was talking with a fellow from WC Plumbing, Kyle Berman, perhaps some of you know him. And I was telling him, you know, we're working to get this done, but man, it's like pulling hen's teeth, if that's the right expression. And he's like, this looks so much better than it did 4 years ago when you first bought it, you know, because, you know, the prior owners they weren't trying as hard, you know? And so I'm not like, you know, patting myself on the back, because honestly, we got a ways to go. Okay. I'm not going to tell you it's like pristine. It's not. But, you know, through this improvement program, I think, you know, we're going to get there, you know?
Good.
So,
That's good.
yeah.
Good. Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Jennifer, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just would point out that in your packet are the community rules and regulations for the park. That they provided for you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Not a question, but going through the material, it was real evident about the planning and the detail that and attention that you've put into this.
Thank you.
And to make it a nicer place is always great. Thank you.
Quite welcome. And some of the credit goes to Jennifer. You know, the storm shelter was her idea.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll now open the public hearing on this item. Is there anybody else here to speak on this? Okay, and I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from council or any additional questions for the applicant? Councilman Horn.
Mayor, I don't have any other questions. If nobody else does, I was just going to make the motion that we approve ordinance number 5712 and move it to first reading.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Cast your votes. Introduce and hold first reading.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now have first reading.
Ordinance number 5712, an ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located at Gusty Drive and Platte River Road from R Rural and GC General Commercial to PD Planned Development, providing for repeal of ordinance in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. First read.
We'll now move to item 22, which is resolution number 2025-090, authorizing the mayor to execute the development agreement with Kina Investments LLC for the Meadowbrook Manufactured Home Community Project.
Thank you, Mayor. Travis Jaycott, City Attorney. This is the agreement that goes along with the project we just went over. This stipulates the terms that the developer is going to comply with when they're phasing through construction on the park. The terms include the construction of the storm shelter, construction of the water line and the fire hydrant, and going through a phasing schedule that the developer and planning department have agreed to. It's pretty straightforward, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for our attorney on the planned development for Meadowbrook? Are there any comments from the public on this item? Any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen.
With no additional comments, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2025-090.
Councilman Horner.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to the consent agenda, all items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff? Councilman Horner.
Item number 11, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Von Baron.
That was the item I was going to suggest.
Okay. Councilwoman Ganem.
Item 8.
Any other items from council or staff? Are there any items from the public to be removed? Okay, seeing no other items, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 5 through 7, 9, 10, 12 through 15. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make that motion.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 8 is a motion to receive the 2024-2025 tax increment financing annual report. I have a report from Jen Nab, our finance director.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Jennifer Nab, Finance Director. We have a recommendation to receive our tax increment financing annual report. And in this report, we talk about our current and past TIF agreements that are going through the city. And we've got where they land. The majority of this information comes off of the state report that comes out every year. It came out last month. And we do this report every year and need to have it completed by May. And it goes through talking about the current values per county records, which is the last 3 columns of the report. And then it also goes through all of the different TIF agreements that we have here. The first one that I do want to point out is South Broad. That is the one that the city is involved with. That one is also going to be finished with its 15-year here in the next year or so. And the reason I want to highlight it is that when we originally took this over and loaned ourselves some money, we also charged ourselves 5% interest. And with the property tax that we're getting from that, when we finish, I do think that we're going to be underwater a bit with ourselves. So I suspect unless the property value really goes up and we get a lot more property tax payments coming in that we move to the general fund, that I will be coming in and telling you that we owe ourselves a little bit of money, and I'll be asking for forgiveness. I won't know exactly what that is until we see how much is going to come in, but I do want to just give you a heads up on that. And it's mainly because of the interest that we're charging ourselves and what we thought we'd get in property tax. The rest of the report, those are TIFs that are owned by other entities. The money comes in and then we pass it through, and I'll be presenting those in the fiduciary funds later in the audit report. And I will now take any questions.
No, I had no questions per se. I just wanted it to be highlighted.
Sure.
And so thank you.
Councilman Horner.
Well, I do have a question now, but you know, this is a hard crew up here asking for forgiveness. That's going to be tough. But anyways, I just am looking at it, and if I'm understanding this right, you've got an improved value at the end down there of $220,600,000. over a base value of $30,700. Is that correct? That's what I'm writing there. So we're seeing quite a bit of an improvement that these TIF dollars have helped drive. And we're looking at that TIF value then, that's total of about 3.4 million. Okay, all right. I just wanted to basically highlight that and just show that I know TIF is something that we have to be careful with, but when it's applied correctly, it really can bring value.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Are there any comments from the public on the tax increment financing annual report? Okay, seeing no comments, are there any comments from council? Councilman Jensen?
I was just going to make the motion to receive the report if there's no other comments.
Councilman Ganem?
Second.
Cast your votes to receive the report.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 11 is a motion to receive the March 25th, 2025 Traffic Committee meeting minutes. We'll have staff report from Troy Shaben, City Engineer.
Thank you, Troy Shaven, City Engineer. On March 25th, the Traffic Committee met and had 4 items on the agenda. The agenda and comments are attached. I'll briefly run through them. The first item was Bergen had requested no parking signs on Union Street near 4th Street. This is the second time they have applied for that. The first time, I believe, they wanted no parking all along Union. This time it was just on the northeast part of Union. The committee met and is going to propose to them to put no parking signs where they're asking, but they'll be during school hours only. So the second item is to discuss signage related to the recent ordinance on truck traffic, specifically along Broad Street. The discussion was we are still in conversations with NDOT over placing signs on the north and south side of Fremont to try to deter truck traffic and get them to take the bypass. The intent was to talk to the NDOT commission at the meeting that was supposed to be here on Friday after the blizzard. That meeting was canceled. Our intent is still to talk to them when that meeting is rescheduled, but we are in conversations with them. So the committee's recommendation was to continue conversations and trying to get those signs placed. The third item and the fourth item are both related to traffic signals. The traffic signal study on 23rd Street. Item number 3 is Summer Street, which has an item later in the agenda to discuss. The recommendation there is to remove the signals and place a 4-way stop at 23rd and Summers. And then the fourth item was the signal at 23rd and Nye. And the recommendation there is to leave that intersection as is. I can answer any questions.
Any questions on the Traffic Committee report? Councilman Horner?
Thank you, Mayor. Troy, thanks for bringing this forward and appreciate you sharing this with us. I really do. The reason I asked for it to come off is that item number 2 in regards to the through trucks. It's a little frustrating for me personally because I was, pushing this thing, with, support from everybody else up here. What's frustrating for me about it is we're trying to do the right thing for our citizens who happen to live in Nebraska, happen to pay Nebraska taxes. They're Nebraska citizens, and we're somewhat being stymied by the state now and their rules regarding the signs. And I get it, but I just hope we can find some way through this thing so that we can get some signs up. I think that'd be the fair thing to do for trucks. But it's just a little frustrating. So, Troy, I'd appreciate it if we could, keep the lines of communication open there and we can keep updated on this and how we're doing on it, and just hope we can find some common ground with NDOT. Thank you.
Councilman Von Baron?
There's been some discussion, of course, on the stops, and we discussed this at a previous meeting, stop signs and trying to deal with 23rd and Summers. I guess you 23rd and I is somewhat secondary. Question is there, and I realize you're somewhat bound by the report, Troy. So the question is regarding 23rd and Summers, as you watch that traffic, there may be more to this than I understand, but it almost seems like we could do with a two-way stop at that intersection. And evidently there's some more discussion that I probably haven't been part of regarding the railroad, but it almost seems like a four-way stop, given the amount of through traffic on 23rd, might not be necessary if we just made it a north and south stop.
We're not bound by the traffic study. That's a
Right.
recommendation, and the committee just happens to agree with the recommendation. I mean, the council can do whatever they want. I guess as far as 23rd and Summers intersection goes, the way the study works is they analyze it, and it's basically based on speed and traffic counts. And at a 35-mile-an-hour speed, that intersection, according to the traffic study, justifies a two-way stop, meaning the north-south traffic would have a stop sign, the east-west traffic would not have a stop sign. We had them analyze that intersection deeper because I'm well aware that this is a hot button issue. And so we had them analyze that a little further at 40 miles an hour, at 45 miles an hour. At 40 miles an hour, it's borderline 2 and 4 lane, or two-way stop and four-way stop. I tend to be a little more cautious. So if you're on the border of a two-way and a four-way, I'm going to go with the four-way stop. We analyzed it at 45 miles an hour. It showed a four-way stop. Under none of those circumstances did it call for a traffic signal. So that's the rationale behind the decision at Summers. Nye Street, I think, is a little different in that the study analyzed Nye Street and came back with a recommendation for a four-way stop, but also included information that said, typically when traffic signals and everything are designed, they're designed on what's called the 85th percentile, which means what do 85% of the people, what's the speed that 85% of the people travel? And the traffic study identified if the 85th percentile speed was 40 miles an hour, it would justify a signal. I don't have the history at that intersection as everyone else. I'm guessing that speed limit on 23rd Street was set probably in the 70s or the 80s. Historically, traffic speeds from 80, 90, 2000 increased. Actually, in the last 10 years, we're seeing a reduction in traffic speeds, primarily due to people on their phone not driving as fast. I hate to say that out loud, but that's one of the reasons. I bet we didn't have it done. It wasn't part of the traffic study because we don't analyze speed. But I'll bet if you went out there and you analyze the 85%, it's probably right around 40 miles an hour. So which is why we're going with the signal at Nye, is that I'll bet you're pretty close to the justification for the signal at the 85% at 40 miles an hour. You mentioned a train at Nye. I don't believe those signals were ever tied into the tracks like they are like old 275 and
Thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Problem with not stopping traffic going north and south out of Washington Heights is, particularly in the school year, it's a zoo. You're not getting on 23rd from Summer Street on if you're trying to get kids back and forth from school. It's a particular time of the day, on a particular time of the year, but there's no way to go two-way stop there. It's got to be four.
Councilman Sukram.
Yeah, I appreciate the study bringing forward. I live in that area and I see it every day. Even though the study is maybe it's doing counts, am I correct? I don't know if it's seeing the reality of what goes on at that four-way stop. People blowing the four-way stop, going from east to west. I've gotten several calls today opposing removing the light. So I hope we're not bound by the study.
We are not bound by the study. It's a study we did and it's data. I tend to be a data person. It's the recommendation. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to stop the conversation here, but they're actually, this is to receive the traffic committee report. There is an item specifically for removing the traffic study later on. So, I mean, certainly I'm willing to have the discussion now and later, but,
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the council? Are there any comments from the public on the traffic committee meeting? There's no other questions from council. I'd take a motion to receive the traffic committee meeting. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make that motion.
Councilwoman Ganem.
A second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, item 16 is ordinance 5711 for the approval of the purchase agreement of city-owned property to Waterflex Software LLC doing business as Waterflex. This is the second reading. Any additional report on this item from first reading?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't have any other comments to make regarding it. It's the same as the last time we had the reading on it.
Are there any questions from the council on this item? Okay, any comments from the public on this item? There's no additional comments. I'd take a motion to hold second reading. Councilman Horner.
Yes, Mayor, I'll make the motion for ordinance 5711 to hold second reading.
Councilwoman Ganem.
I second.
Cast your votes to hold second reading.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
I'll have second reading.
Ordinance number 5711, an ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to Waterflex Software LLC, DBA Waterflex pursuant to Nebraska law. Second read.
Moving on to new business, item 17 is
Point of
resolution.
order.
Oh, sorry, Councilman Jensen.
I'm going to make the motion to suspend the rules and move ordinance 5711 to third and final reading.
Okay, Councilman Horner.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor. Ordinance number 5711, an ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to Waterflex Software LLC, DBA Waterflex pursuant to Nebraska law. Final read.
Cast your final vote. This would be ordinance 5711 for the sale of property to Waterflex.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor. Ordinance 5711 is approved.
Now moving on to new business, item 17 is resolution 2025-079 awarding the professional services contract agreement to Burns McDonald Engineering Company for the airport layout plan, the amount of $447,525.
Troy Shaven, city engineer. There was an item on the consent agenda that you approved earlier to accept a grant award for $451,000 for this airport layout plan. This item is to use those funds and hire Burns and McDonald, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Burns and McDonald to do the airport layout plan. The airport layout plan is basically a master plan of everything that we plan on going on at the airport over the next 5 years. If it's runway extensions or maintenance or improvements, or if it's a taxiway or even a hangar improvements. I know the new building that they built out there was part of the last airport layout plan we did. It's basically just a working model of what we plan on going on at the airport over the next 5 years. The FAA is very stringent, and they want to be on top of and make sure we know what is going on with all the airports and what the improvements are coming up. So this is to award the agreement for the airport layout plan to Burns and McDonald. There is a 5% match, which is $22,500 is what the city would pay. The rest would be paid for by the grant. I can answer any questions.
Questions from council? Any comments from the public on this? Are there any additional comments from council? If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Horner.
Yeah, Mayor, I will make the motion that we approve resolution 2025-079.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now moving on to item 18, resolution 2025-085, authorizing the removal of traffic control lights and placement of 4 permanent stop signs at 23rd Street and Summers Avenue.
Typically, the policy has been anytime regulatory signs, speed limit changes, anything that affects traffic goes into effect, it's brought to the UIB and the city council for approval. We're requesting to, per the traffic committee's recommendation, we're requesting to remove the stop lights at 23rd and Summers and replace them with a 4-way stop. There's been a lot of discussion over this. I'm going to give just some facts real quick over the traffic study and some things that we found out, just for your information, and then I can answer any questions. That intersection, we do have traffic counts back to 2000 for the intersection of 23rd and Summers. In 2000, the daily traffic was about 13,400. In 16, it was 9,600. In 18, it's 9,500. Last year, when we did it as part of the 23rd Street analysis, it was 8,310. So the traffic at that intersection has been dropping over the last 25-ish years. For a comparison, the traffic counts at that intersection right now, like I said, are about 8,300. The 4 intersections in Fremont, off the top of my mind, the busiest, or what I would say the most recognizable 4-way stops in Fremont, for me anyway, are Luther and Military. That's about 9,500 cars a day. Luther and 16th is about 9,000 cars a day. 16th and Lincoln is about 9,600 a day. And 16th and Clarkson is about 9,500 a day. So all of those intersections are functioning as 4-way stops right now and have larger traffic counts than are at the 23rd and Summers intersection. Just for reference, busiest intersections in Fremont are going to be Broad, Military, and Broad, and 23rd. They're in the 25,000 a day, so they're about 3 or 4 times what any of those intersections are. In the traffic study language, it does say unwarranted traffic signals have been studied. There are studies that show unwarranted traffic studies actually are unwarranted traffic signals are less safe than stop signs. The reason for that is the speed component. Generally, 4-way stops are at less volume intersections. Traffic lights are generally warranted where you're getting into a large traffic volume or where getting people through the intersection without backing them up is a priority. Or stop signs are generally considered safer in low volume intersections and signals because of the turning into moving traffic component. If you think about a 4-way intersection that has a light and I take a right on red, if I turn right on red on a 4-way intersection with a stop with a traffic signal, the cars that are moving perpendicular to me, in this case, would be going 35 or 40 miles an hour. If I were to pull out in front of somebody at that speed, they would have very little time to react to me. And if they were unable to react, the accident would be more severe and more likely to cause serious injuries. The other component is it's a form of what they call the suicide left, which is we've all been at an intersection where the light turns green and you have oncoming traffic and the light turns yellow and you worked your way out into the intersection and you got to get in behind that last car that comes through. Those cars coming at you are doing 40 miles an hour. And if you jump out and the car coming doesn't stop, he's hitting you at 40 miles an hour and doesn't have an opportunity to stop. Stop sign intersection, a four-way stop sign intersection. We've all been there. You pull up and we all do our little mosey where we all wave each other through and nobody moves. And if I were to cut in front of somebody at a four-way stop sign, they may be doing 3 or 5 miles an hour. They have plenty of time to stop, give me the one finger salute. We're both on our way and nothing happened. That's kind of the background behind why the stop signs are considered safer than the traffic signals. The other issue that is kind of a component with this intersection is it was signals, and then we had some issues with the signal malfunctioning for about 6 months. It was on, it was off, it was blinking. You know, there was inconsistency in the way that the intersection was controlled. And last June, we made the decision to just, because the equipment there was just, it's not maintainable. Those traffic signals are, I'm not kidding when I say literally 70s and 80s era. There's no replacement for those parts. The decision was made to turn that into a four-way stop. We do have accident data from 2020 to 2024, that end of May, start of June. There were 15 reported accidents at that intersection. That's basically 15 accidents in 4 years, so less than 4 a year. Not a horrible number, but since it's been a four-way stop, last June, there's been 1 reported accident there. So it's more than 1 because it hasn't been a full year, but more than 1 accident a year. Now, granted, that four-way stop right now is a four-way stop with huge orange flags. It's got barrels. It's got stop sign ahead signs. For a while, it's had flashing red lights to let everybody know, that the stop signs are coming. So that's probably an extreme four-way stop, and that certainly has something to do with why there haven't been that many accidents. But the four-way stop that's there, it's been there a year. I think people are used to it now, and I think the consistency is another reason for leaving it as it is now and making it a permanent four-way stop. Briefly, we talked about 23rd and Nye. The decision there, it's a very similar intersection to 23rd and Summers. The speed component there is a reason why I think we're choosing to leave the signals as is on Nye. And also, we have replacement parts for Nye. We just completed an improvement on 23rd and Luther, and we're going to be able to use those parts from the 23rd and Luther. The old signals that we took down are actually going to be able to be used at 23rd and Nye for improvements. The traffic study recommends there a four-way stop. And with the declining, I know there's an event center going in out there. I know there's talk of houses going in north of 23rd. I know there's growth going on out there, but with the history of the declining traffic out there, I'm not going to be surprised if someday 23rd and Nye is also a four-way stop. It just seems to be the way traffic is going now. I think your choices moving forward in a lot of these less traveled, less busy intersections are going to be four-way stops or roundabouts, which a lot of people's hearts stop because they don't like roundabouts, but they've been proven to work. The issue with the roundabout, it's not going to work here at Nye because we just don't have the room. We'd have to acquire right away. You'd probably have to knock down a couple buildings. A roundabout probably wouldn't work on 23rd and Nye. It might work on, or I'm sorry, on 23rd and Summers. It might work on Nye. We haven't evaluated that. Anyway, I apologize for rambling, but there's some kind of facts that went into our discussion as a traffic committee.
Thank you, Troy. Councilman Sukram.
Yeah, I appreciate the study again. I appreciate the data, but I'm looking at things that, what's happening on the ground. For instance, I got a call this morning. I think maybe Blair got the same call. Someone blew the stop sign going from west to east. I mean, that accident could have been bad too, had the guy fully pulled out. So the calls that I've gotten from people that live in that area are asking to keep that light at 23rd and Summers. So I can't support on removing it, but I do appreciate the data.
Councilman Jensen?
Yeah, thank you for the report and everything there. I'd like to, if you can you touch a little bit on if council decides to move forward and go ahead and not follow the traffic study's recommendations, what will it cost to make that a functioning lights over there?
You know, the estimate we got, now this is probably gonna be mid last year, so you got tariff numbers in here that nobody knows where they're going by the time this gets done, but it was in the 300-ish, $400-ish thousand range. That's if everything there is right. I'll tell you right now, this intersection has been there a while. Those lights that are there right now are not going back in the same place. The setbacks from the streets, from when it was designed to the standards where it is right now, those poles are gonna have to be moved back probably 5 feet. There's not room at that intersection. We're going to have to acquire either additional right of way or purchase an easement from one of the adjacent property owners. Typically, that's not a difficult task. If it is, and one of those property owners doesn't want to sell that ground, you're into a condemnation issue, which I know the city council has never liked to do. You know, at the end of the day, I think $300,000 to $400,000 is probably where it would come in, but it depends on the underground electrical, the underground conduit, where's that at, the wires that communicate between the poles and the control boxes and everything. There could be a substantial amount of work. They may have to rip out the intersection to get into the design. I mean, there may be stuff going on underneath where they have to cross the intersection. I don't know. I would say $300,000 to $400,000 is probably a good guess. For reference, $400,000 will overlay about 6 blocks of road, about a half a mile of road, asphalt overlay. So pick your 6 worst blocks, 6 worst block of street in Fremont that you've driven on, and you can either have that done or you can have the signals at Summers in 23rd.
Councilman Horner?
Thank you, Mayor. Troy, would the light at 23rd and I work at 23rd and Summers?
You're into the same situation. I mean, you're probably talking about $150,000 or $200,000 to move it. Maybe $150,000 to move them down there, but then you're gonna have to replace the ones at Nye. And so it becomes, you know, 150 to move it, and then maybe 200 to put up a new set if you can, if it works. Yes, the answer is yes, that would work. And honestly, I didn't even consider that.
Anything else?
Yeah. Troy, here's where I'm coming from on it, is I'm happy that event center is going in. I'm looking forward to that. I think it's a great addition to the city. I'm happy it's going in. I do think that between that and the golf, the country club, you know, my daughter got married at the country club, and we had a crowd. And I know whenever all those folks were leaving, because, you know, most of our guests came from the Fremont area that night, they were all turning left out of the country club and they were all heading down. There was quite a line sitting at that light. I think there would be a longer line at a 4-way stop. And I think if you happen to have 2 weddings going on the same weekend, I could see that getting pretty long right down there. And I just think a light would let slugs of traffic go through. I would much rather see us go and move that light at 23rd and Nye to 23rd and Summers if it would work, and then end up with a 4-way stop at 23rd and Nye. And then, you know, later on down the road, the traffic's already still dropping and that light goes out. I mean, we've got the one from Luther, as you pointed out, that we could use for spare parts. But then if that light went out at 23rd Summers, then hopefully traffic by then is even less. I don't know if it will be or not, but hopefully it would be, but that is definitely a direction I could support. I don't want to see that go permanently to a four-way stop. I've had a number of calls. None of them have been good. None of them have been pleasant. And that's sometimes just what we have to do is we have to deal with those kind of things. But on this case, I tend to agree with what those callers are concerned about. The pedestrian traffic is another one. If we do a light there, if we can do that light, I would like to see us do something with a controllable button so that those pedestrians can get across at least one of those sides there.
Any lights that go in now, that's pretty, I mean, that, it would probably be extra. not to-
Well,
not
thank
to
you.
have
That's my comments.
So all the traffic study numbers that I've thrown out so far have been from our study on 23rd. There was another traffic study done for the event center on Summers. The thing about the two is ours is analyzing workday peak volumes, which is Monday through Friday, basically 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock at night when everybody's either going to school or coming home from work. The traffic study for the event center, their peak volumes are different. Their peak volumes are going to be a Friday night, a Saturday night, maybe a Sunday morning, because I know they're planning on like condos and stuff out there too. But the point is that the traffic that event center adds is not on top of the peak volume that our traffic study did. It's at a completely different time, which just means you're going to have high traffic more. You're going to have it on weekend nights and you're going to have it during the weekday going to work and going to school. The event center traffic study, even with, and I don't disagree that there's going to be a lot of traffic coming out of there, that with the numbers that they had showed that there was not a warranted signal for 23rd and Summers. So we have two traffic studies that say that signal is not warranted. The event center also did a peak flow, a peak day during the week, and their numbers they're close. They're 83 was our number per day peak, and then theirs was in the like 84.10. So I mean they're within a margin of error, I think. So I think it shows that at least the two traffic studies, the data that they have is similar enough. The pedestrian traffic, I don't think they did it in the summer. There was a comment made at the UIB meeting about a concern about kids walking to the pool there. I think the pedestrian data was taken during the school year. It only showed about 11 people a day pedestrian traffic at that intersection. It was not during the summer when the pool's open. So that data those numbers probably go up. I don't know how many people from Washington Heights walk down to the pool, but certainly in the summer, kids going to the pool, it's going to be more than that. But the data from our study that wasn't probably taken in the summer showed 11 on average per day.
Councilwoman Ganem.
I think most questions were already asked. I was thinking just to add on with Nye area, that particular intersection, does it have higher traffic than Summers at this point?
Nye has higher traffic than Summers. Nye is about 8,800. Yes.
Okay, and we're about 8,300
Right.
at Summers, and that's why you would propose keeping the lights at Nye and not at Summers, a light. Is that correct then?
Keeping the lights at night and not at Summers, correct?
Okay.
It's based on the data and it's based on the recommendation. And again, the traffic light at Nye, we go back to the 85th percentile of speed. I think at Nye, certainly as a traffic light, there's a greater speed issue there with a traffic signal than there is with a stop sign. It's been well proven. Stop signs slow traffic. Stop lights or traffic lights allow people to get going. If you think about it, it's the purpose of the traffic signal study that we're doing on 3rd Street right now is so you can get on at Menards and go all the way across town. And we're going to try to time those lights so you don't have to stop. Traffic stop signs slow traffic much, much more than traffic signals. Traffic signals are there for speed and to move large amounts of traffic through.
Well, I know I don't live in your area, but I certainly have heard it is a contentious topic from the people that live in Washington Heights. And people that I've been on do fly through those stop signs as well.
And I'll also just comment, I honestly didn't think about it, but I'm sitting here thinking about it. Moving the traffic signals from Nye to Summers seems like a good idea, but if you're gonna do that, I think you're better off just redoing the lights in Summers, because you're gonna have to go through a lot of the process anyway. And really, you're moving a problem from Nye now. It's not a problem at Nye. You're moving a problem maybe 5 or 10 years down the road to Summers to have to deal with. And then you're also having to do additional work at Nye now. So I don't know that I like the idea of moving entire sets of signals around. I think you're better off just reconstructing a new one at Nye. If you want a signal at Nye, my recommendation would be just build a new one at Nye. Or at Summers, I'm sorry. If you want one at Summers, just build a new one at Summers. I think in the end, you're gonna come out ahead.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
I know your studies show that Nye is busier, but it's been my experience that there's never anybody at Nye. And every time I've been on Summers and 23rd, every time somebody blows that stop sign. And it just seems dangerous there. And Nye, maybe on 23rd is a lot busier, but there's not a lot north of 23rd on Nye. It doesn't seem like that would warrant the stoplight, going north and south. So it seems more feasible for the stop sign at Nye in
So
my.
It doesn't warrant
Yeah.
a stop, it doesn't warrant a signal. It
Right.
recommends a stop sign.
Right,
What I'm
exactly.
saying is there's a comment in there that says if the 85th percentile approaches 40 miles
Sure.
an hour at Nye. I think there's an argument there that it does. I think you could say, whereas at the intersection of 23rd and Summers, even if the speeds approach 45 miles an hour with the numbers that they have there, the traffic study says it's not signal warrant. So 40 miles an hour at Nye would warrant a signal, 45 at Summers would not, based on the traffic volumes.
Sure. The other concern would be, of course, the train traffic across 23rd. And I think it was a lot easier getting out with the light after that train backs all the traffic up. It just seems to flow a lot easier after the train with the light.
Councilman Peterson.
Yeah, and I thank you for being on the hot seat tonight. I know that's your job, but I thank you for being here. Yeah, I was in light of what we're saying here, again, I'm not an engineer, but I do want to be fiscally good with our money. And I, like others, have had a lot of phone calls and not a single one wants to leave that a four-way. I mean, not even close. And I can't help but think, and I realize some of our infrastructure is old, as in not digital analog. We're talking some of our stuff's probably stone tablets, and I understand that's being worked on. But if you say your first response was, and I'm not picking on you here, Troy, I'm really not. Yeah, I suppose we could move that. Well, I don't know that we need a traffic light, and you're saying we don't at 23rd night. That's north of 23rd. That's never going to grow. It's as big as it's ever going to be right now. That's it. There's no more. It's dead end. It's over. The event center was mentioned. We have 35, 40 more cars going to be coming in from west of Fremont. Hopefully more people are going. Fremont is growing. We have empty lots out there by the event center. Fremont, it seems like we're growing to the east and to the northwest. So why wouldn't we want to get ahead of the curve? My thinking. And I thought, let's move that thing now. It doesn't cost a lot of money to move it relative to $300,000 or $400,000, because I get the paving illustration, and thank you for the comparison. But I know there's got to be if we really put great minds behind it, and I know we have them on staff, we should be able to figure out a way to do this for less money. and get what people want. And I've heard the blow through the stop sign scenario umpteen times. And so I do think public safety, and I certainly respect JEO engineers and so forth. They do a lot of things right, but I think unless you live here, because the people I talk to every day live here. They're not cracking a book. They live here. They go, there goes another one. There goes another one. And so I think I want to do what's right by the citizens of Fremont. And I know you don't really have a dog in this fight anyway, but you're making recommendations and so forth. But from what I'm getting back, feedback from the residents of Fremont, they want that stoplight moved or put back. And I don't think I've gotten no pushback from taking the one out at 23rd and I. They're like, yeah, whatever, put a stop sign, do whatever. It's like, it's not ever going to grow. It's as big as it's going to get. But the other one is going to get bigger. And if that stop line fails in 3 or 4 years, then I guess we'll deal with it when the time comes. But I just think we have some sharp people on staff. Can't we figure out some way to do this and save us some money and do that? Maybe we can't. Maybe I'm asking for the moon here, but that's my 2 cents.
Councilman Vaughn.
Yeah, just to kind of parrot some of the things that Troy's been saying to us. We're guesstimating maybe if we wanted to take the Nye intersection equipment and move it down to that location. Best case scenario, $150,000. We have to get in under the streets, the wiring's bad, etc. Other things go wrong. We could be into that for close to the $300,000-$400,000 it would take to completely redo that intersection. And I don't like any more than you the prospect of putting equipment that's 5-10 years away from the end of its service life, maybe even beyond at this point. It's just still functioning and thinking that we can just plug and play. I don't think it's going to be that easy, and I think that's what you're trying to tell us. And I just would also point out that I do think that the 4-way stop has been in place for a while and it's been functioning, but those existing lights that are still overhead are a distraction. And once they're removed, I think the 4-way stops become much more readily apparent and plain and easy to kind of deal with and wrap your head around, so to speak. And also, as we talk about other bypass issues as far as Broad Street, that also extends to 23rd Street corridor. And at some point, we have built a bypass around our city to prevent through traffic on Old Highway 30. And I think a stopping point is going to be a further discouragement from grain trucks traveling from Arlington to North Bend or vice versa, or some variation of that. And I don't like the idea of losing it in its entirety, but for what it would cost for our options, I think that we have to kind of sit and wait and see what happens. Because right now, the traffic study is comparable to all the other major 4-way stops that we have in town. It's comparable. It really is. And so I think it would behoove us to not try to assume we can do this on the cheap. We don't want to do things on the cheap in this town. We don't want to move equipment that's going to be broken in 5 years, or maybe it breaks on the truck on the ride down there. I think if we're going to come back, I think we have a council and the staff that is smart enough to go, hey, in retrospect, if a traffic study shows in 3 more years that it does warrant a new signal, we will do that the right way, have those setbacks that are necessary and prudent, probably aluminum breakaway structures to make those safer poles, and so they don't kill people and rupture gas tanks, things like that. There's a lot that really goes into it. And I don't like that some folks are upset about it, but I think until those lights come out of there, until we can really get a grasp on it, and then we'll conduct another study in due time. I think that this is the best of our choice of evil, in my opinion.
23rd Street corridor, where they're looking at improvements to Nye and they're looking at improvements to Summers. They haven't done the engineering of the signals yet. So that, I mean, if it comes back and you want a signal at 23rd and Summers, there's an engineering component of that that's going to come into play, and they're going to have to come and tell us what is physically possible to do there. If it's possible to take that stuff from Nye and move it to Summers and it's plug and play, that's the 120. If it comes back and we get into the concrete and everything, I think the number I gave you before was $300,000 or $400,000. I'd say that 120 is best case scenario, like 300,000 is best case scenario on a new one. You start getting into pavement and new conduit, new electrical feeds and basis for poles and right-of-way acquisition or easement acquisition. You know, that 400 takes that 120 up to 220, maybe it takes it up to 250. That 120, I think is we've moved poles before. I mean, we've moved single poles before for $20,000 or $30,000, just pedestrian poles. We've inquired about moving poles, specifically the one down on Old 275. We've looked at moving older poles down there, and that's where I'm getting that 120 number. You know, if it's a straight comparison, that moving it from one intersection of Fremont to another intersection of Fremont is the same, well then yeah, it could be 120. I'm gonna say that's best case scenario, and cost is not the number one reason we do anything, but it is certainly a component of every decision that's made. And, you know, we talk about growth, we talk about the potential for development on Summers. So in the past, Fremont has typically not asked larger developers capacity and stuff like that. I think we've changed the way we're approaching development. And in the past 4 or 5 larger developments we've done, we've asked the developers for contributions to help assist with some of these public improvements that have been made. That's a negotiation. And I think to the developers' credit, they've stepped up and done it and know that I mean, it's a part of development moving forward in every city now. It's, you do Summers now, and it's $300,000 paid by the city of Fremont 100%. As development occurs out there, if there is growth and there is a new subdivision or something that goes in, they'll be required to do a traffic study. That will be required to look at that intersection again. If there is a contribution from that subdivision that comes in, and they'll probably be asked to contribute to some of the costs of improving that or putting a signal in on Summers if it becomes warranted down the line. I'm not trying to push off money on anyone else. I'm, you know, $300,000 in the terms of the city's, you know, whatever budget, $100 million budget is not going to bankrupt the city, but $300,000 is a lot of money, and money is certainly a component of every decision, especially in public works, where we have a lot of projects that we're trying to work on and prioritize, and well, there it is.
Right. Councilman Von Baron, did you have a comment? If not, I'll go to public comment. So, okay. Any comments from the public? All right. Any additional comments again from council? Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if we've got a chance to have a developer come in, at least pick up part of this, if it even becomes necessary. If we do something now, we've got it. If we hold, just put it, the poles do need to come down. They need to come down to make it look like a 4-way stop. Like I said, we've got people that are blowing it. I know we do, but that's something we have to monitor and enforce. And I think taking those poles down will help that. But I support that becoming a 4-way stop there.
Councilman Vaughn.
I would defer if there was any other conversation. I was gonna make a motion.
No, just for clarification, thank you. You said we're in the process of another study for the lights along 23rd Street and
The study is completed. That's the
oh,
traffic
that study
for
is
this, yep.
okay. Okay.
The next phase would be deciding whether or not we want traffic lights at Summers or wherever, and then the engineering comes in and does the improvements.
Councilman Vaughn.
If no other comments, I would make a motion to approve resolution 2025-085.
Councilman Jensen,
And I will second.
That motion fails 3-5, Mayor.
okay. All right, we'll now move on to the next item. Item 19 is Resolution 2025-082, authorizing the increase of credit card limits.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Jennifer Nab, Finance Director. This resolution, we've got 5 credit cards that we use at the city. We've had them for some time. We have strict rules. They are kept in finance. They're checked out, checked back in. They were at $5,000 limits for 4 of them and $2,500 for the 5th one. And even though that adds to more than that, the overall limit was $17,500. So even though the individual adds to more, we were still capped at that point. For some time, we will sometimes approach that cap as we have more people traveling or having to purchase things that you can only get with a credit card. We absolutely were hitting that when the emergency happened, when the storm happened. And we had people coming in that were assisting the city, coming in from other city linemen. We needed to put them in hotels. We were also contractually required for, when we've got a union that if someone's working 16 hours, we need to feed them. So we were buying things to feed these folks as well. And so I contacted the bank and temporarily asked that our limit get increased from $17,500 to $35,000. And we also upped the individual cards as people were going out to purchase emergency items to $10,000 for each card, except for for 4 of them, and $5,000 for 1 of them. I would now like you to ratify the fact that I did that. And then I would also like you to consider leaving it at that level. So again, overall, we will not have more than 35,000 in total at one time. And but the items are a little higher. Nowadays, if we've got 5 firemen that are going to a conference or what have you, they have to take multiple cards or use 1 card to buy a hotel or 1 card to do airfare because of the kind of lower limits. And it's causing an administrative burden on my team. So I would like your approval to leave them there. I've also added the ability to pay online, which we have not used. We would still come in with claims. None of our normal processes would change. But if there was an emergency situation where we'd hit a limit or something happened, I want the ability to be able to pay a card online to remove a block or what have you. So that is what I'm asking for, and I'm available for anyone.
Councilman Horner.
Thanks for that explanation on this, Jennifer. The thought occurred to me while you're talking. Could you just briefly talk about what controls you have? There's a total of 5 cards, if I'm reading this right. What controls do you have on the physical card itself?
Yeah, so the physical card is kept in our safe. And if someone wants to check out a card, they have to have if they're going out of state as an example, they have to have a signed out of state approval. If they're making a purchase, they have to have a purchase order. We write down the purchase order and their name and what they're getting. And then they have to still turn it in just like any other with receipts. And then once we get the okay, historically, you'll see it on the claims as Pinnacle Visa. And those are people that are using the cards. And then the cards are immediately returned to us. They're not in anybody's individual names. And we're quite strict about it.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
I just wanted to thank you for being proactive and doing that in a time of emergency. it's not always easy and everybody's scrambling, so that was a good thing that you took
Yeah,
initiative
thank
to
you.
do that.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
felt like it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Councilwoman Ganem.
No, just to add to that, I was going to do a thank you, and certainly people pay their own bills by online. And that would make sense that the city would be allowed to pay online as well too with our credit cards. Is the amount that you put, 35,000, enough, or does that seem like it would cover?
Right now,
As an
we do
emergency?
think it
Okay.
is enough. Yes, thank you.
Any additional questions from the council? Are there any comments from the public? Seeing no additional comments, are there any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make a motion on resolution 2025-082.
Councilman Horner.
I'll second.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
All right, now moving on to item 20 is a motion to receive the audit report for fiscal year end 2024.
Jennifer Nab, Finance Director, Honorable Mayor, City Council. I would like to introduce Colby Jensen, who's our head auditor from Forbes Mazars. And we are presenting today, we're asking you to receive the audit report. And I will first have Colby provide her report, and then I also have some additional insights that I would like to present, and we will then also be available for any questions. Colby?
Mayor, members of the council, as Jen mentioned, my name is Colby Jensen. I'm an audit director with Forbes Mazars out of Omaha. I've been on the city's account for the past several years, so have a strong working relationship with the finance team and department here. And just before I get started, I want to thank Jen and her team for their hard work and dedication to the finances of the city. Working with us, we ask a lot of questions. We ask for a lot of support, and her team was always willing to provide us access to those that we needed to speak to, as well as provide sufficient audit evidence to opine on the financial statements. So the first document that I want to cover today should be on page 357 of your materials, but it's the opinion on the financial statements. So as part of our audit process, we are here in the fall for about a week, and then we return in January for 2 weeks. We're on site. It was 4 team members primarily for those 3 weeks. And we're doing risk assessment in the fall to determine which areas of the financial statements may be more susceptible to risk. We try and gain an understanding if there's been any process changes specifically related to the internal control structure of the organization, and design an audit plan from there. And we come back and execute that plan in January. An audit of the financial statements is not a detailed audit of every transaction. And so it's providing reasonable rather than absolute assurance that the financial statements would be free from material misstatement. So this document, this first opinion, is over the financial statement reporting, and we're happy to issue a clean or unmodified opinion, noting that the financial statements of the city are free from material misstatement. The next opinion then is on page 430 of your materials, and that's specifically to government auditing standards. And that's the opinion on compliance with federal laws and regulations, as well as internal control over financial reporting. So we consider if there's any items that come to our attention that could potentially be non-compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, or agreements, and would communicate those to you all if we've noted any. There were no items to note or to bring to your attention. In addition, we consider if there's any control deficiencies or potential control deficiencies over internal controls for financial reporting. And you'll see here in just a second, there was one item in particular that we did bring forth, but we issued a clean or unmodified opinion again on the compliance with laws and regulations. The final opinion then is on page 432, and that's the compliance with the Uniform Grant Guidance. When an organization receives federal funds, currently right now, if you expend over $750,000 of federal expenditures, you're required to undergo a compliance audit to ensure that you've used those funds in accordance with the grant documents and federal regulations. We did audit 2 federal programs this year, the Airport Improvement Program as well as the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. That audit or those two audits equated to about $4.3 million of the 4.8 million of federal funds. So we subjected 90% of the federal funds to audit. Again, on these two opinions, we've issued a clean or unmodified opinion, noting that the city did comply with the regulations and the compliance requirements of each federal program. And there were no items that came to our concern or concerns related to specifically the internal controls related to compliance and potential non-compliance. Going back 2 pages then to 434 is a schedule of findings and question costs. This really provides an overview or summary of the audit results. So you'll see here it mentions that unmodified or clean audit opinion. Number 2 does mention that internal control over financial reporting and that there was a significant deficiency noted. On the following page, you'll see a little bit more information specifically related to that. When we consider the internal controls of the organization, there's 3 different severities. Your lowest level is just a deficiency. Next is a significant deficiency, and then the most pervasive or potential issue would be a material weakness. When we looked at the overall internal controls specifically related to year-end financial reporting, there was one item or kind of a combination, I guess, of items related to adjustments that were proposed and recorded by the city, as well as adjustments that were proposed and uncorrected or not recorded by the city. And as we analyzed the impacts of those, determined that that was a significant deficiency. And so you'll see that called out here, as well as the views from management and their planned corrective action. This particularly relates primarily, I will say, to prior year's financial statements in fiscal year 2023. The information within the city's internal financial records was properly reported, but the information then taken from the system and used to compile this document, which is the audited financial statements and footnote disclosures, there were some discrepancies in that information. So ultimately, there were some modifications or uncorrected adjustments in prior year's audit report that have been corrected this year. And that really came to light from Jen and her team doing a thorough review after the fact of last year's audited financials being issued. They took a deep dive and reconciled their internal records, again, back to the audited financial report, and found some inconsistencies and brought those to our attention early on. So we've had conversations about that really since probably April or May of 2024. And ultimately that was corrected. So at the end of fiscal year 2024, going forward, that should not be an issue. Going then to page 437 is our required communication to management and those charged with governance, more or less stating that our responsibilities again are to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance on the financial statements. Although management and then you all charged here are responsible for the oversight and management of the city's financials, assets, and reporting. The following page then goes into some additional information that we consider specifically to the financial statements. You'll see at the top of the page here, it talks a little bit about those additional opinions that we provide as part of our audit engagement. But at the end of that second page, it does talk about the significant accounting policies of the city. As you're reading the financial statements and looking at the footnote disclosures, note A is what I consider to be a roadmap to the financial statements. If you have a question about how maybe the city is reporting or accounting for a particular line item on the financial statements, note A provides an additional clarification as to what that might be in relation to or how the city's determined how to report that information. This next page then goes into any unusual policies, methods, or alternative accounting treatments. If there were any unusual items, we would bring those up, but we do call attention to the use of regulatory accounting, which is allowed, and that is specifically to the utility funds. So you'll see on the financial statements, there are some of those regulatory assets listed or regulatory liabilities, and that is, again, within the requirements of the GASB statement number 62. Financial statements, sometimes it seems like numbers should just be one way or the other, they're right or they're wrong. But there's always a little bit of judgment or estimate that's involved in your financial statements. And so we do call that out, but there are two particular items that we pay attention to. The allowance on uncollectible accounts. So when you have a receivable, the likelihood of collecting upon those receivables. So there is a portion that's estimated as uncollectible. And then as well as the assigned depreciable lives of utility plant and equipment for the city. This last part then talks about those audit adjustments that were identified. On the second page or the following page, you'll see specifically the adjustments that were proposed and recorded by management related to internal fund activity and balances, specifically related to the ARPA funding and insurance proceeds. So that's really one fund owing another fund money. That could be between your city funds or your utility funds. If you think about the city's financial statements or records, there's over 20 essentially separate financial accounts or statements. And so we opine on each of those or look at those from an individual capacity. And so there are some activities of maybe the general fund owed the electric fund or vice versa. And so that's what these adjustments relate to, as well as the city does report on the modified accrual basis of accounting for its governmental funds. And that does require us to look at whether or not those funds are collectible within 60 days of year end. So there were adjustments specifically related to grant funds that the city was owed at year end, however, had not collected within 60 days of year end. Moving on then is to the uncorrected misstatements, and you'll see attached in this document, there are multiple pages kind of going through each of what we call the opinion units or the funds and the impacts of those uncorrected misstatements. The first one would be on page 455, and that relates to the governmental activities, which is all of the governmental funds kind of combined. The city currently has, has in the past as well, has internal service funds, which is referred to as ISF in this document. And that's really accounting for all the activities of the city's employees' benefits, the health insurance plan. And so the standards really state that those funds should break even. Whatever you're charging essentially your employees, you should be paying out in expenses. And the city has been fortunate enough with some of the, I'd say, lower level of claims that number doesn't always necessarily break even. And so we've looked at that and considered how you would allocate that excess funds in the internal service funds between the city and the utilities. And that's something that has been a recurring item in the city. We've had discussions with the city and will continue to show it that way. So you will see that listed here on your governmental activities. The next item then is on page 457, and that's your business type activities, which is combined utility funds. So again, you'll see the offset for that internal service fund allocation. And then as well to the significant deficiency that I had mentioned, there was unbilled revenue adjustments that are also shown here within these figures as well. We then break it down even further on page 459. Specifically for the general fund, there were slight claims related to legal expenditures that actually related to prior years that were paid in fiscal year 24. And so we show those here as those should have been expenses recognized in prior years, but were recognized this year. And then on page 461 and 463, it goes into more detail specifically for the gas and sewer fund in relation to those unbilled revenue adjustments. I'm happy to answer any questions specifically about those audit adjustments that I talked about or the results of the audit before Jen provides an overall review of the financial statements.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the explanation. I'm still lost, but thank you. In general, and I guess a big picture, I'm looking at the, for instance, on page 462, the impact on the net position, we've got that listed as 0. There's been a number of adjustments and so forth throughout this thing. In your opinion, are we at a point now where we're even, where we've got these adjustments made and hopefully going forward, we should be able to, keep track and manage and do all stuff that we need to do. And some of these things, it sounds like goes back several years. And so it's bringing all of those forward and now making the adjustments. Am I kind of tracking a little bit there?
Yeah, so these schedules really show the impact of if the city were to make these adjustments, how it would impact the information in the audited financial statements. And so the items specifically related to the utility funds, that was, again, the internal financials of the city. So if you were to look at the general ledger system that Jen uses to produce your reports on a monthly basis, or as you're asking for various reports throughout the year, the information contained within that system was accurate last year and this year. Where the disconnect was taking that information and then compiling this 120-page document is where some information was, I will say, posted incorrectly, so reversed almost. Instead of adding something, it was subtracted. And so this has corrected those issues, and going forward should not be an issue. In addition, to elaborate on that, Jen and I have walked through multiple times reconciling the information from the internal general ledger system to this year's audited financials with, I will say, dollar rounding issues. I think Jen would say $2 from that standpoint. So feel confident about that those would not reoccur. We've also talked about other items that have come to our attention, specifically the audit adjustments that were proposed related to the internal fund balances and those deferrals. And I think Jen has a process in place to review that, or her team has a process in place to review those items and consider those on a go-forward basis. The only item that I think will reoccur, and this is again just based on the city's policy election, would be not allocating that internal service fund, which is very typical. Most of my clients that have internal service funds, they don't break even. It's very hard to break even, to be able to charge your employees the exact amount to cover the costs for health insurance and benefits. And the administrative task of trying to allocate it and then reallocate it back into the fund and keep track of it just doesn't seem worth the burden, I guess, or the work to go ahead and get that done for the financial statements.
Okay, so yours are recommendations. Some of these things still have to be done. And particularly when I was going to ask the question, since you kind of closed with that, on that fund for the insurance, there's no way that there could be an overage just held and okay,
So,
all right,
yeah,
that's
we
what's
don't- we're
happening.
gonna-
Okay.
You're gonna continue to see it every year because we like the way we manage it. Our employees are employees. If someone has a claim, we don't care if you're DU side or city side. The employees pay in, we keep it in one fund, we pay it out of
Gotcha.
that fund. We leave it there, then we report it to you, and it will show up as a misstatement every year, and I'm 100% okay with that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Von Baron.
Just a couple of general questions regarding general funds. There's funds that are available at discretion. I would assume those are our reserves, what we commonly call reserve funds.
Yeah, I've got a slide on that I'm gonna present here shortly. Do you mind if we table that
No,
one?
please do. That'd
Okay,
be
great.
great. Got a couple follow-ups. I'll just ask.
Any other questions at this point? Go ahead, Jen, if you're ready
Okay,
for your
great.
presentation.
So just to follow up on what Colby said, last year when we were comparing the audited financial statements with our own accounting system, we were manually comparing everything, and it took a lot of time. And we continued to do that after the audit when we found the discrepancy in the report. But to reiterate, as Colby said, in our accounting system, in our management reporting, everything was 100% correct when we provided reports to you, other than this one. It was correct when we provided reports and data to our consultants who looked at our rates. It was correct. So it really was this report, which is still important, that had the unbilled revenue difference that we then fixed this year. We've also then made some process improvements where now I can download from this system and download from ours and immediately compare And the reporting system here that we use doesn't do pennies, which is why it rounds to the nearest dollar, which is why there's still a couple of bucks difference between our accounting system and the reporting system. But we're very confident in the new process and very pleased with it. All right, so you guys still ready to go? Just got a couple of slides. All right. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So on page 7 of the financial statement, or 363 of the packet, there are, within the MD&A section, we have some tables. And sometimes it throws you a bit. So the way this is going to work is, first of all, when you see the city logo, we're talking about the city side. When you see the DU logo, that means we're talking about the utilities as we go through the few slides I have here. The first 2 slides here, of the entire growth of the city and the DU, 30% of that growth was on the city side, 30.3, and 60% was on the DU side. So in that report, it does not mean that the city grew 30%. It's just of the piece of pie, how much was city side and how much was DU side. So on this slide, it shows that the net position increased for the city by 6 million, which is 30% of our total growth. I also want to point out that in prior year, you see in that 3rd column up at the top, 32 million in public works. That was that Broad Street relinquishment that the city gave us that asset, which is why you see a big difference between the years because we don't have that item here. On the next slide, then this is the DU, the utility or the business type activities. And so of the 100% of the growth, 69.7 was on the utility side. And if we go to the next slide, so this, Councilman Von Baron, is of the general fund, with our ending fund balances, how much are restricted, committed, endowed. Last year at this time, the unassigned fund balance was 13.1 million. That has dropped to 11.6 million, to answer your question. And, you know, just one example, item 11, the capital improvements there, that's where the multi-purpose building that we've already committed on, the law enforcement center, some outdoor warning signs. You show the 1.3 million for code enforcement there. So it's all the different things that we've already committed. And the 11.6 is that unassigned balance, to answer your question.
So is that what we equate to reserves? Because I was just noticing that number is about, what, 42% of our normal expenditures? That's what I was trying to reconcile. It seemed like a large number.
Yeah, so the way the city ordinance reads is that we're supposed to, on the general fund, have 25% of our next year's budgeted revenues as reserves. And so when we take, we haven't done our budget yet for next year, so, but this year, when you took the budgeted revenues, but then within those budgeted revenues, we budgeted to use some reserves. So you don't want to do 25% of, you know, determine your reserves based on the reserves you're going to use. So if you remove some of that, then it's a much lower number. I also just analyzed, you know, how much we have, we spend in expenses and what should we have. And we're required to have a large portion of that unassigned fund. There's you know, when we do our budget and we look at our budgeted revenues for FY26, we'll want to take a look at what 25% of that is and what we're requiring to keep as reserves when we go through that budget process.
Well, and we've been targeting spending down our reserve balances, and I'm just trying to get a feel for where we are in that process.
Yeah.
Where are we? I've kind of lost track. We had quite a substantial reserve at one point. We've been trying to spend that down to, are we getting close to our target?
We are getting close to our target. There's a little bit of room left in there, but, you know, if we looked at this year's budgeted revenue and took out all of those, reserves that we're spending and stuff, it's 10-ish million that we're required. There's not doing a good job of spending.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Next slide, bond ratings. As you may remember, we've maintained our bond rating year over year. We are AA on the city side, and on the Department of Utility side, we've got a AA-, which is the highest rating you can have for a coal burning coal plant for a utility. So our bond ratings are excellent. And so I just wanted to point that out. Next is just some definitions. On page 14 and 15 of the financial statements, or 371, 372, you see a statement of net position and a statement of activity. The net position is like a balance sheet. Statement activity is like an income statement. These are really good to look at because every city is required to do these statements. So it's a good one when you're trying to compare us to other municipalities. And so I just wanted to point that out. For our balance sheet on the city side, I also wanted to point out that we've got the unearned revenue that Colby mentioned. 3.4 of it is related to that Broad Street relinquishment that we'll be using those funds. So funds already paid to us that we have not earned yet because we haven't done anything with it yet. And then the other 4.2 million are the ARPA funds that we've committed and we're spending on the stormwater master plan, the stormwater clean out, that we need to have that work done by the end of FY26. And Troy tells me that the majority of it will be done this fiscal year, with some maybe spilling into next. So that's what those unearned amounts are. On that same page lower down, you see all the fund balances. And within the city, we've got three major funds, which is the general, the street, and the sales tax. And I just want to point out that for those non-governmental funds, non-major, at the back of the report on page 68 to 71, you have all of the other funds broken out individually so that you can see the detail on those as well. And this is where you see the legal immigration ordinance, 1.3 million, in the street fund, etc. For the city, our net change in fund balances, we brought back in a total of 2.7 million in overall combined balances. We did have and did spend planned spending on that non-major governmental. The reason that one's negative is because we spend down Keno funds and airport funds on planned expenditures. And so those did drop, which is why you're seeing a negative number there. The internal service fund, and this is where you see that 1.4 million. So of what we took in and then the claims that we had, we ended up with a balance, and then we chose that 2.9 million, we chose not to split that out. So that is the misstatement. And this is where we have our employee health care, our workers' comp, our employee wellness funds, and we, while we almost always take the recommendation of our auditors, this is the, the one place where we like the way we do it. We treat our folks as one team when it comes to this, and we find it much easier to manage those funds by keeping them together. Next slide, we've got now we're back to the Department of Utilities and what we refer to as the proprietary funds. And last year on the sewer fund, we were quite negative. You all voted to raise rates. We are still negative. And what's driving that negative, you can see, is that negative 1.7 million in interest expense, which is the cost that we're paying on the bonds and on the investments that we made, which are working beautifully at the sewer fund. And we're starting to dig ourselves out of the problem that we had because we've raised those rates. So I do want to point that out. I also want to point out that the contributed capital and the cost recovered through contributed capital, as we talked about earlier about developers that Troy mentioned, when developers come in and build a subdivision, they're required to put in infrastructure. Preaching to the choir, I know you guys know this better than I do probably, but we've got, you know, wastewater pipes underneath and water pipes and gas pipes, and they pay for that as part of their development. Then they dedicate those assets to the city. So this section is not funds from our ratepayers that we used, but is from those developers and then the assets. And we split those two out so that that's very clear for you all to see on that report. And then overall, you can see that net position, that 60% on that second slide of the 13.3 million. And you can see that while we did end up with a positive balance on the internal service fund, that fund did drop by 1.6 million over the course of the year. Next slide. This is a really, cash flow is a really great report and a great slide. The reason is that when you're looking at what are our operating activities, what money do we take in from our ratepayers, what are we trading to other funds, what are we taking in from other funds, we've got payments to suppliers, again, up all on that top section, and our payments to our employees. And so as a business, if we never had to invest in anything or fix anything, we're a healthy business. Then you start to see the negatives come in when you've got the cash flows from the financing activities. You've got the big investments that we make into our property, plant, and equipment to maintain. And on the utilities, you know, we play a long game. There's a reason that for the budget, you all look at 5 years. And when we make an investment on the utility, it's not variable, right? It's big chunks. And so we've got some long-term planning that we've got an investment we need to make, which is why last year we came to you and said, hey, we might need to bond, and we gave you notice of that so that we could start adding up the monies that we're spending that we might, if we feel like we're going to get low on cash, we might need to go out and bond. And so you can see here kind of what we've spent and what we've taken in, and it's a nice slide just showing all of those ins and outs. But overall, our cash, you saw it dropping from 29.7 million to 27.9 million. And so we're, you know, overall spending more than we're taking in. Next slide. This is not our money. This is a custodial fund. These are the TIF funds coming in that then get immediately sent out. And there is often a timing difference between when we get a check in from the county and then we mail it out and when they cash it. So at September 30th, we had 495,000 in there of not our money. And we report that fund to you, and we report it separately. And this is why, because it belongs to others. And then almost finally, on the footnotes, I mentioned earlier that you can see all of the different funds that are in the footnotes and get additional details on the distinctions between governmental and proprietary. That's on page 68 to 71 or in the packet 424 to 427. We also, I'll note that note C7 gives you a detailed breakout of all of our debt. That is an interesting note. And then on page 72 is our CFA. It lists all of our federal expenditures, which departments we've gotten the funds from. And then again, a reminder that we're spending those ARPA funds. And then last slide is my team. I, again, want to just really thank Colby and her team. The number of Saturdays that Colby was on the phone with me all day long as we were going through this stuff. The overtime that her team put in and my team put in. Last year at this time, I came and said, hey, we've got 3 people that are new under a year, and it really put a burden on the rest of the team. And this year, we all were able to really step up and apply what we've learned and get the work done. And last year, we were a week late getting you this report, and this year we're on time, so we're pleased with it. And we've got the added confidence of the new process that's comparing the report to our own systems. And so I couldn't be more pleased, and I will open it up to any questions.
Any additional questions from council?
Did I talk longer than Troy or less?
Thank you for that very thorough report. Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I think we all probably sit here and realize as you go through this, there are things that we didn't understand. It just helps when you bring them out. And as we go into this in the following years, it might be useful to have a study session. For example, for an hour or so, a little bit more informal, we can ask questions. Just had several, but just in the interest of time, one of the big ones I noticed is we've got about $48 million in assets in Cornerstone. And I'm just curious how that is. I mean, that's not an FDIC account, clearly. How is that money secured by having that large amount in one institution?
So the way that we manage our investments, we've got a process out to bid, and there are strict limits and strict types of investments that we can make. And stars, and we have a responsibility that the quotes come in, the bids come in, that we go with the highest bidder. Right now, each of the banks are required to, and I'm going to look at Jody, make sure I don't misspeak, but they're required to ensure our, based on how much we have with them, they've got limits based on their own assets, as far as how much they can offer us.
They're actually, they pledge securities against that. Yep.
They pledge securities against that.
Okay, thank you. No, I wasn't, I
yeah.
wasn't sure whether we were covered by the nature of the investments or whether it's stability of the institution. Okay.
They're federal, they're CDs, they're CDRs, they're, much lower risk and lower interest because of it, We don't have any foreign investments.
That's fair.
We don't do stocks. And then just this last year, we came and presented, these are the financial institutions that we use.
At this point, thank you for not doing stocks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Don't get me started. Any other questions?
Not seeing any.
Okay. So if you think of any, or you want to meet individually or what have you, about it all day long. So thank you very much. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And please tell your team thank you as well. I know the amount of hours they put in regards to this is a lot and time. So thank you. Are there any comments from the public? Okay, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Horner.
Yeah, Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we receive the audit report for FEE 2024.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 21 is resolution 2025-089, authorizing the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement with Dodge County for the construction of a turn lane. So go ahead, legal.
Thank you, Mayor. Travis Jacob, City Attorney. This is the item that relates to the event center that's going in that was referenced earlier during the traffic study. This is part of the construction of the turn lane that'll be going in as a result of the traffic that'll be increased due to that project being developed. We agreed to pay 50% of the remaining costs after the developer chips in $50,000, but our share is capped at $150,000. The county has approved by and through their administration to these terms. They're going to consider this at their April 16th meeting. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions for our city attorney on this item? Any comments from the public on this item? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Horner.
Mayor, I think this item's been thoroughly vetted, so if there are no other comments, I would make a motion that we approve resolution number 2025-089.
I have a comment.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, Councilman Jensen.
I am not as convinced as many on this council are that this is even a project that's going to be viable. It's, to me, it looks like if you build it, we will come, and I'm not as positive about they will come as many others are.
Councilwoman Ganem.
I second the motion.
Okay. All right. Cast your votes.
That motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay. Take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Vaughn.
So moved.
Councilman Sukram.
Second.
Cast your votes to adjourn.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody. Yes.
Well,